Defining Duke, an Xbox podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support the show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia.
And we are live. No, we're not. And welcome to Defining Duke Ultimate, an Xbox podcast. I am your temporary host today, Lord Cognito in the building. The Dukes are back. And of course, Mr. Matty Plays. How are we doing, sir?
I'm doing quite well. Interesting to be in this seat for once. Not starting off the show. I was running a little late, everyone. So I was like, Cog, just host, man. It's fine. You can do this. You're good at this. So, yeah, good to be here. We're going to talk about some Redfall, man.
No doubt. And of course, we have my brother, the single player selfish experience himself, Lord Sovereign, in the building, in the realm of the Dukes. How are we doing, sir?
Doing very well. Thank you for having me, both of you. Matty, I've never had the pleasure.
Yeah, really, when you think about it, we've missed each other so many times. Yeah. We've met a bunch of times in person, but we've never had a chance to really cast together, have we?
Never. You're always avoiding me. I don't know. You're always move.
I think it's the other way around. You always got something going on Sundays.
We're moving or something like that, I figured, So I'm glad to get the invite. I thought I might never get it after, my Lockmort debut.
Oh, I saw.
Boy, it was spicy.
How did you talk about? Nothing happened. Never. But glad to be here. Thank you so much, guys. And yeah, let's talk some Redfall.
Yeah. So look, we had a big week not too long ago. Obviously, the good friends at Microsoft and Bethesda, we were able to take a preview, some hands-on action with Redfall. Shout out to Arkane, Austin, and the team. And yeah, we got thoughts, man. We got thoughts. So figure like Matty, we discussed earlier, we just kind of free fall around and kind of like give our thoughts and impressions of what we played, what we experienced, each of us individually, and just overall thoughts of the game. So start with our guest first.
Yes.
Start with our guest first. So
I caught a little preview, right? I caught a little preview. We were chatting in the corner by the corner.
Yeah. So how far do you want me to go in? Like just general overall impressions? Is that great?
Yeah, general overall impression before the deep dive.
Okay, so for me, I think the biggest thing when we walked in, I asked you. I said, "Hey, who's here from the dev team to talk about the game?" And so we were thinking it's going to be, level design or lead programmer. They're like, Harvey's here. Harvey Smith is here, and I'm like, "Oh wow, okay."
Legend.
Yeah. So for me, guys like Warren Spector, Harvey Smith, Richard Garriott, they're big. These guys are legends, and I think it's arguable that for me, my favorite genre of game is the immersive sim, because you have so many different elements of RPGs, of action games, of stealth games. It's all there. So the immersive sim is very special to me, going all the way back to System Shock, Deus Ex, Thief, things like that. So a guy like Harvey Smith is kind of big in my pantheon of gaming heroes.
Yes, sir.
So that was very cool to see him there and be able to talk to him and see him talk about Redfall, the latest game that he's co-directing. So in general, going into Redfall, what you immediately notice is, for me, the way I play these games is I go into the world and immediately try to break it. That's what I do. I'm fiddling with things on tables. I'm reading notes. I'm talking to everybody that's in my vicinity. So we start the game off in a safe house, right, in a firehouse. And it's funny because I glanced over at the guy that was playing next to me, and within 30 seconds, he's outside already cocking his gun, whatever. And I'm walking around, just talking to everyone. And immediately you get that Arkane feel where you're like, okay, the environmental storytelling, the sense of this world is lived in was very apparent. And that was very exciting for me to see, because that's Arkane, right? The game starts with that. It's a world that, something's gone awry. They don't really tell you what's going awry. You feel it, you sense it, you experience it. So that was very cool to just talk to people in the firehouse. And then as soon as I got outside, I said, okay, they gave us a mission that we could do, right, during the gameplay test. And I said, okay, screw that. I'm not doing that. I'm just going to go outside and go left. And it took me immediately to the docks, the boat docks. And I was talking to Maddie about how, wow, I got to the boat docks and you see literally a wave coming off the ocean that's frozen in time. The entire boat dock is frozen in time. And what you realize is that whatever's happened in Redfall, this vampire apocalypse thing that's happened in Redfall has essentially enclosed everyone that was already there in. There's no getting out. And literally they turn the ocean on itself and create a wall where you can't get past it. Visually, that was a very striking and amazing thing to see. So again, the environmental storytelling was very huge. Then we get into the shooting. The shooting feels a lot, I think, heavier and more prominent that you would find in a Dishonored, right? Or obviously Deathloop, a lot of it was shooting, but in what you expect from sort of an immersive sim game in the vein of a Dishonored or whatever, where the shooting is secondary, right? It's more about the powers and the melee stuff. I felt that it felt good, right? And then in the powers, overall, they seem very cool. Each character has 3 powers that can, there's a skill tree that can be evolved. And I used Layla Ellison, she is the engineer sort of character. And she is essentially the reason why everything in Redfall happened. She is the test expert. She's patient 0, and something happened that didn't kill her, didn't turn her into a vampire, but actually left her with a bunch of psychic powers. So a lot of her special moves, right? Each of them has 3 special moves that can be evolved.
Yeah, it's like left bumper, right bumper, 2 abilities, and then a special, like an ultimate.
Special, yeah. Mm-hmm. So hers are psychic based and kind of traversal based, right? So that was very cool to see. Hers, allows her to kind of get up on. There's literally an elevator that she has that comes up, a psychic elevator that takes her to higher levels. There's another defensive move where she puts up a force field that can, block incoming attacks, and then later on, as it evolves, it can absorb the power of those attacks and throw them back at the enemies. And then the other special is where she brings in her ghostly ex-boyfriend or whatever to fight along her side.
I thought when Harvey said that was a joke.
I thought that was a joke. I was like, he was dead serious.
That really went down.
So, just in general, everything that I saw was exciting. We'll get into the details of how I felt about that stuff as we, continue to play more. But I was excited to see that the classic sort of world building stuff that Arkane's known for was there. I was excited to see that the gunplay felt better and heavier, because obviously it's more of a shooter than anything else. And that may be a little bit of my problem with it. But overall, I'm excited to play it and play more of it.
No doubt.
That's where I'll leave it, and we'll just get into more details.
Yeah, no doubt. Mr. Matty Plays, man. We was in the building. It was cool to see the Dukes together, you know what I'm saying, in an event like this, you know what I'm saying? So let's get to it, man. You got also hands-on in the game. Obviously Harvey and the team was there explaining things. So what was your overall initial impressions, of Redfall now that you got a chance to digest?
Goes without saying, I was a little skeptical heading in, maybe. If you paid attention to Defining Duke for the last... when did Deathloop come out? It's been a while, right? So,
yes.
I was going in thinking I knew what they were going to do, thinking I knew their plan. And when Harvey was presenting to us, just a little quick preview of what's going on, I tried not to draw too much attention to myself when he goes, and you're going to play this single player. There was no co-op available. He's like, we want you to see that this game is single player. I have Sav to my right and then I Cog right next to him. And I was like, okay, I got to act a little professional here. But I was like trying to lean over and glance at you two. Like, you hear that? Still playing. I was like, oh.
I noticed that you just kept leaning forward a little bit more. And I'm like, Maddie's really excited.
Yeah. I was super into how he was presenting it, man. I was like, okay, all right. They caught me off guard. So I literally felt my mindset change in real time. I went, oh, single player. This is a whole different dynamic now. Because I had no doubt it'd be fun in co-op, but would it be the Arkane fun that I'm used to? I'm much like Sav. I love the immersive sim elements that we see in Dishonored, Prey, and so on. And I feel like what we saw in Deathloop strayed more into the shooter space a little too much and less on that exploration. So it sounds like Sav and I had a similar MO stepping into this. We both had our own objectives set in our head. For me, it was, what can I enter? That was the thing that I felt was really missing from Deathloop. I felt like the online component kind of tied back the ability to crawl through as many windows as I wanted, go into apartments. and make this world feel lived in. And so for me, I went out of the fire station that we all started in, and I think I went northeast. And eventually I ended up in a theater because I was trying to restore a popcorn machine. And I loved how the theater was wide open. There was no loading screen to enter. And that's something I recognize with the open world. Like, to enter all of these interiors, there wasn't that load screen that would carry you into that area like it has in previous games. Like, if you think of Dunwall and Dishonored 1, to enter that first manor, there's like a load screen there. So it never broke the immersion, which I think is going to be an underrated quality of this game. But I was really pleased by the environmental detail. But when me and Sav talked, one thing I noticed was missing in some of the places I entered was I didn't find many notes. I didn't find audio logs or stories. I just found a cool location that I could enter and complete a quest within. And so sometimes that led to me exploring, finding a place. I could go inside it, but nothing was really there until I found the right mission for it. Like, there was a missing piece to that puzzle. What I will say, though, is I was really pleased at the detail in the world. I was pleased that there was that Dishonored level. I can go anywhere, because even in Deathloop, there was a limit how high you could go, and I couldn't stand that. But in Redfall, what I really loved was I was playing as the sniper character, and I was making my way up the ladders to the top of buildings, and I was tackling these areas in all these different ways. And I love that because it felt very unique to my playthrough. So what I was really searching for was good exploration here. And I walked away pretty pleased with that. I will say, though, my biggest gripe right now on just an overview would probably be my powers felt kind of hamstrung. Like, I needed another player, because as the sniper, my abilities were to scan the environment so I could see who's around. I was able to cloak, which was a great ability, so you could go stealth, and the way you augment them is great. Like, I had one upgrade that made it where if I took a shot, the cloak wouldn't go away. I had one where you do damage resistance, so pretty much like you could approach it like a tank or a hidden sniper. And then my ultimate was this auto-targeting sniper shot that if you were to kill a vampire with it, it would dust them. But what you may notice is traversal abilities are missing there. I don't have that. So when I was playing as the sniper, who I apologize, I forgot his name, I'm just crawling around the environment.
Jacob.
Yeah, I think so. I love his look, by the way. The way Harvey described him, like you see his eyes missing and whatnot. I just this guy is cool, right? I love this. So of course I picked the edgy dude with the sniper rifle. I'm like, yes, this is so Maddie. But anyway, I pull up to a lot of these locations and I like how I could tackle them, but I couldn't help but feel a bit limited. And Sav, I got to give you credit, because I think you put it brilliantly, is it kind of felt like they took Corvo's moveset and split it amongst the characters. So for me to feel complete, I needed another player. Like, I would have needed Sav's Layla to get me up the buildings and unlock even more opportunities, instead of giving it to me and being able to go up the buildings myself. So single player was actually pretty good. Like, it worked really well. But for me, I just felt very limited, where I started to want the co-op a little bit more. Because, they didn't leave behind the single player. Like, that much is true. It definitely feels like the game was built with it in mind. But there's no doubt that the locations, I think, had more of a, you're probably going to want to play this with a friend type of approach. You can get by in single player, but that was my experience. I'm sure, Sav, it was different for you. You had an ability that would get you up rooftops and whatnot, so you may not even feel the same. But for me, the exploration was good. The kleptomaniac vibes were fully in check. I loved it. But I just felt a little limited by my power set personally. And I'm curious, of course, as we go through our experiences, if you guys felt the same about that, because that was, to me, the biggest gameplay drawback. I felt kind of limited in solo play based off the character I selected.
Gotcha. No, it's interesting. I was very curious to see both of your impressions, because obviously you guys are the single player immersive experience guys. So I think for me, coming into it was, already had a solid feel that this game would probably be something I'd be interested in. So when Harvey comes up and say, hey, you guys are going to be playing the single player version of Redfall, it kind of took me back. And I guess it took me back only because I felt they made it a point to say there is a distinction, so to speak, right? And I thought that was refreshing. I in my mind, even though you may be leaning over, Maddie, looking great, I'm like, yo, I think, Maddie, they gotta be loving this. Like, I did not see this coming. So for me, started it similar to you, saw. We should have talked. Should have picked someone. Because I actually, before I started playing, I was looking for you. Because I was like, yo, wait, who you gonna take? Because I wanted to take someone different. We ended up taking Layla. And we fought after the fact. So kind of the same thing. So I started out. And first, you started the fire station. I'm moving around. I'm talking to people, just looking at the shops, looking at the, first thing off the back, from a technical standpoint, I really like the art style. It really grew on me because I remember when I first saw the game in trailers, I was like, it looked okay. It wasn't nothing like wowing. But when I actually played, I was in front of it. I was like, no, this actually looks really good. It felt 60 frames per second to me. I like going through the fire station. They had the detail in the 4 pictures, like 4 police captains or fire captains, and they were NPCs looking at them. I go through the door. And the first thing for me, what I noticed, what I thought was very interesting was the mists. So I would walk and I would see like a part of the map and covered in blue mist. And I remember when, we were speaking to Arkane prior, they were saying something to the effect like if in that area, like the vampires are buffed and you have to kind of find the source of what's going on there. Then I saw other areas where they were like red mist. And if you enter that red mist, you were getting hurt, right? So I was just like, okay. And that kind of gave me State of Decay, blood pack energy. What is it? The blood heart energy. We got to try to get that out of there. So again, the first thing I felt was my nitpick at first, because there were a lot of the cultists that I saw. And I'm laying them down. Gunplay felt good, just tearing them up. And I'm like, they hit you you hit the little visual cue, like, what's that? When someone spots you. But I didn't feel like their cone of vision was like super like extensive.
Yeah.
So I was like, bro, you see me, stop it. You know what I'm saying? So I was shooting you, getting them out of there. But the thing that I noticed is I got lackadaisical, and they had set up like a almost like a street barricade kind of thing, right? And I saw 3 of them, but apparently it must have been a 4th one. And then it just said such and such rings the alarm. So these people who I felt was very easy to take out, literally, Maddie, they start coming. It was about 15 of them. And they start running down on me, and I could not get out of it. I was like, yo. So that's what I felt, the strength of the overwhelmingness of the game. Now, the thing I liked was the vampires. Like I was actually more impressed because when I went into that blue area where they kind of buffed, as soon as you walk in, they talk. Oh, so you came in here to sacrifice yourself to me? How dare you? You know what I'm saying? And then like when you alert them, the thing that I loved is unlike the standard human cultists, teleport, we on you. We are on you. We are not the standard NPC. We are on you. I was like, I like this. And then the key thing for me that I really love, because gunplay felt solid, but I will say the thing that I really love was that you can't really kill the vampires. You can put them in a down state. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I like is the finish and the steak, the sugar,
the steak on the fire. Yeah.
Oh, that's the most visceral thing for me. And the final point I had is where I do agree with Maddie. What I liked is that I forgot I got to an area. They had a couple of turrets set up. There was something in the house. I went through a window on like the 2nd floor. Again, I was using Layla. She has her first ability was kind of like that Titanfall thing when you kind of set the abilities. Mm-hmm. Bullets throw it back. That's not useful against vampires. That's not useful. I'm
just cultists, yeah. It wasn't
I was like, it's not useful. Second one was that lift. That's when I started to notice the verticality of Redfall. I'm like, oh, okay, I can get up on stuff, do stuff. Yeah. And then the third one was the boyfriend, which is very powerful what I saw. But when I went in there, what I liked, and even though it may not have been the notes and stuff that you guys are used to, what I liked is I'm going through the house, and clearly the vampires have taken over this house. They had someone strung up, sacrificed themselves. It was a very like room to room. I'm feeling no tension. You know what I'm saying? And you hear them, and I'm like, I like this feel. So overall impressions was gunplay felt good. Mine nitpick on the little cultist AI, and the clamber took a little getting me used to, because I'm a person like Destiny, like if there's a ledge and it's here and I jump up to it, I'm used to like the auto clamber, get up. Redfall is you walk up to it, you have to, and then you go up.
Yeah, it's
so
like
I
a
was
double press. Yeah.
yes. So I had to get used to it. And you see the hands go up, stuff like that. So that was my initial impressions. But yeah, I just wanted to get further, with you guys, now that I bring it to you, Maddie, as far as, you mentioned, the narrative aspect and you mentioned the single player action. Was there any other things that you felt really stood out with your play experience, or maybe things that you felt like maybe concerned about, long term with Redfall?
Yeah, I definitely have more positive things to say, but if I were to note a particular concern for me, it was the AI. That was the number one thing walking away from the game that I said, I don't know if that'll be fixed, because there was frame rate problems occasionally, but I try not to jump the gun on that too much because we're still about a month and change away. They can't optimize that and make it run better. And it wasn't like it was stuttering all over the place. It was, for me in particular, I would leave the firehouse, and once you like enter almost to this new zone, the game would stutter heavily and then it would be good, at least in my experience. Where I felt the concern though was the AI reminded me exactly of how I felt with Deathloop. I don't mind when AI is dumb, because I think AI in stealth games need to be somewhat dumb so you can kind of stick to the shadows and keep that ghostly playthrough alive, right? And if they're too smart, if they're too aware, it becomes frustrating fast. So I get why they went all the way to the other end. It's just that I would be pulling up to areas, and as a sniper, I'm zoomed in looking at them, and they're walking into walls. They're walking into each other constantly. I'm wondering if that's why they didn't allow direct capture, because for me, I found it pretty blatant. The AI for the cultists, at least, was kind of busted. They were not responsive for me at times where I'd start shooting them and they kind of just start running around. It was frustrating to see, because it's exactly what I said about Deathloop. A lot of people were very easygoing on it, saying, oh, it's supposed to be dumb. And I went, no, it's not supposed to be this dumb. And with Redfall, it feels like that same exact experience again, which I think undermines my creativity, because I want to get creative because you are a threat. When you're not a threat, I can just pull up and make a fool of you real fast. That's what Dishonored didn't have. Dishonored, partially because of your arsenal, you were limited, right? You had a sword, and like the gun you used was limited on ammunition. So it's a little bit different in the terms of play style. But in Dishonored, I felt you had to respect the AI, right? They were a threat when guns started flying. Because this game is such a competent shooter, I feel like that's why they've gone this other direction of like, well, guns can fly and you are capable, so let's not make them too smart, too difficult. But I think it just collides with that stealth experience a little too much, and I couldn't get out of my head. That's when I knew, okay, I am a little worried about it, because I was trying to get into that mode of, we're a month away. This is pretty much close to the final build, unless they delay it for whatever reason, which I don't foresee them doing. But I kept thinking about the moments I'd scope in and see enemies walking into each other, and endlessly so, just walking into each other. And I'm just watching them thinking, man, really? Like, what is wrong with the pathing in this game? And when I start shooting them, they're confused. And this is not like when I'm using a silent sniper and I'm cloaked from a distance. Like, I'll shoot them point blank and they just won't react. It was a little disappointing to see that come up again, because it shows that they just didn't fix that issue from Deathloop, to me personally. I know they're separate teams, by the way, but it just showed that there was a carryover here. And I hope they can iron that out ahead of launch. And the reason I bring it up is people will remember, because I cranked on Deathloop's AI and people said, no, it's not broken. The first patch to come out when Deathloop dropped said the AI has been fixed and improved. It was like one of the first bullet points. And people were like, no, it's supposed to be like that. Clearly it wasn't, because they fixed it right away, right? They clearly didn't want it like that. So I do foresee a possibility of that happening again with Redfall. I hope not, but it's something that if I were to call out a con from my experience, that was number one.
No doubt. What about you, Saab? Any other further experience or cons or positives? Either way.
I mean, I agree with Maddie completely, but it was a little different for me because Maddie, since he had the sniper, he had a little more distance, right? He can see it kind of playing out in front of him, where me, I was rushing in a little bit more with Layla. I wanted to see how the sort of the shield ability worked and how that up close. So for me, it was sort of the same thing, where obviously the cultists were not I know we were level 7 during the gameplay, right? They put us up there. They gave us the opportunity to upgrade our guns if we wanted to, and some of the abilities as well. So,
and for the record, not to interrupt you, but our playthrough is later in the game. We're not at the start. Right. Yeah, they put us in a later part with a couple of advanced weapons and things.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So that's what made it a little bit disappointing. I said, okay, at this point in the game, the AI should be scaling to what your power level is and your abilities are, and be able to sort of react to you differently. And I would just get up in their face and shoot them. And that's another thing. When you think about an Arkane game, an Arkane game should be, let me not say should be, has traditionally been built to for you to focus on using the powers in creative ways, right? When you lean more to the shooter aspect of it, and you realize that the AI isn't as smart as you'd hope it is, then you sort of tend to lean into the shooting. I'd run up on them when I saw that the power, I put up the shield and they weren't really reacting to it. And I was just blowing them away with it. It's not fun to do that at that point. At that point, just shoot them, right? And then for me, that defeats the whole purpose of the powers. And that's sort of where I really started to feel a little bit of a disconnect. Whereas, I said, yeah, if you put all their powers together, you have one Corvo. And I stepped back and I look at it, I said, this feels like a PvE hero shooter where each hero has, their set abilities that work well in synchronicity with the other heroes. So the ideal gameplay experience, stepping back from it, feels like it's, 4-player co-op, each player with a different character, and you use all of those distinctly in combat to create these amazing immersive scenarios, these emergent sort of gameplay scenarios that you're not going to get on a player-to-player basis if you're playing by yourself. So that to me was a little disappointing because that's limiting to me. And again, expectations are kind of unfair, right? Because it's like, it's a new game. They're trying something new. They're also implementing a lot of what their DNA is. But as a fan of that DNA, I wanted to see it expressed more deeply in this game. And it definitely feels like it is more of a shooter instead of an Arkane-esque immersive sim. Your powers are the primary thing in single player. In multiplayer, right, you're going to lose some of that narrative stuff because you're not really going to be doing all the narrative stuff when you have 4 distinct people playing. But I do feel in terms of gameplay, it's going to feel more like an Arkane game than anything else when you have 4 players, each playing each one of the protagonists. So to me, it makes me worry about the long-term sort of the longevity of the gameplay in single player and how it goes. Because in looking at the skill tree, right, and seeing how the skills evolve, they don't evolve in super interesting ways. Like, the elevator just gives you like a double jump kind of. It gives you a second level to the elevator that takes you higher. And I forgot what the last one is. So again, that's great for traversal, but it kind of all it does. Yes. Can you use it in the middle of combat to get out of a scenario? Yes, absolutely. But when you couple that with the other stuff that she has, it limits how you play that character. And again, to me, that feels like that's the choice that they made. I just think when you look at a Dishonored, Corvo and Emily have 6, 7 powers each that all sort of once you expand upon those powers is a wide gamut of things you can do combat wise. And I just feel with 3 and them, at least at the onset, appearing like they don't evolve in super interesting ways that make the power versatile. It worries me that in single player I might get tired and just want to play it as a shooter, right, and not be interested in the powers. And for me, that to me was a disappointing aspect of it. It's like, man, I want to see this world. I want to see this story. The fact that the world feels lived in, and I can go around and search. And to Maddie's point, Maddie said he didn't find a lot of notes and stuff like that. When I went to the docks, apparently what happened, that whoever was at the docks that day when the Redfall event happened got stuck there, right? They couldn't go anywhere, and they sort of died inside of these yachts or these tourist boats. And you see people, there were notes scribbled on the ground. You see bodies on the ground, so you have an idea of kind of what happened there. And then you get more context as you find little notes and stuff like that. So that was all there, and I'm excited by that. I just think that when I think of an Arkane game, I think about that. And to Maddie's point, I know he mentioned this before, like when you put that type of gameplay in an open world, the gameplay really has to come together in order for you to traverse that entire world, right? And not feel samey. Usually an Arkane game is smaller. The world is created and kind of bespoke and made for you to mess around in a smaller environment. This is an open world and they're giving you those type of powers. I feel like by limiting the amount of powers per player, it's not. If you gave me Corvo's entire skill set in an open world, that to me would be like, wow, this isn't that. This isn't that. So again, I feel everything about it is competent and well done. I just worry about the long-term gameplay prospects for it as a single player game. And as a multiplayer thing, you have to have players who want to play it the way it's kind of meant to be played for you to see all that the game has to offer. If you go in there and want to play it as a shooter, you can, and I'm sure that's a fun experience, but it isn't Arkane enough for me. So, to me, that's my issue in terms of the AI, the limited aspect of the powers, and I didn't have a lot of stuttering until, Cog, when you and I got up and then, came back 20, 25 minutes later, it was paused. It was in the same place. When I unpaused it, it was stutter, like it stuttered crazily, and it sort of stayed that way. All right. So again, we're a month out from launch, a little over a month. Optimizations can be made. We were playing on PC. We weren't playing on console, so we don't know how the console versions are looking or faring. But yeah, that's it. So to me, it is a necessary, to me, this, like Deathloop, is a sort of necessary step in trying to make Arkane games more palatable to a broader audience. And I get it. And I'm going to enjoy, I know I'm going to enjoy aspects of this game immensely. I just don't know. Obviously, I haven't played the whole thing yet, so I don't know how I'm going to feel at the end of it, the entire experience. But I am sort of hopeful that, these two games were built kind of before this merger happened, whatever. Then, Bethesda became part of Microsoft. And I hope that the sort of Game Pass buffer allows their next project to be a pure immersive sim Arkane game without having to sort of acquiesce to being an everything sort of. It is true, because it just the shooting aspects of Arkane games have never been the most prominent thing. It's about manipulating the world. How malleable is the world, and what can you do to traverse it? And in terms of just literally traversing the world, or just combat stuff. And it isn't. There's some of that there. It's limited by the amount of powers that you have. And I just worry that it just becomes more of a shooter than anything else.
I feel that. I think those are valid concerns from my single player brethren. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously I'm on the other side of this, but I do understand where you both are coming from, especially, you guys are connoisseurs of their games. You know what the potential and the immersion, should be or could be, right? Based on past history. For me, my concerns wasn't that. Like I actually really felt, I think for me, I really felt more tension than I thought I would. I thought I wasn't going to be, I don't say word scared, but like on edge. I think the game had me on edge more than I thought. And I actually liked that. My issues were probably, or a little concern, I would say, would be when I felt I was overrun, right? So I told you about the scenario when, and I think I'm in agreement with you guys on the cultist AI. There's no doubt. I would hope, it gets a little better, because my issue is always where you lose me is distance cones, right? So that line of sight between enemy. So I get you hear a audio chime, bing, they saw you, right? And that's great. You look in that direction, but then sometimes I'm like looking at that. I'm like, I mean, the distance wasn't that far sometimes, and they still were acting like they couldn't see me based on their audio dialogue. There's a lot of audio in the game, a lot of voice, a lot of, hey, what's that? That kind of stuff. Where I got a little frustrated was just that there was a time when either they ran down on me or I was in a house. I'm doing my like kind of breach and clear. I'm looking through each room. I'm going through, and there was a vampire up top, and I think it was 2 vampires at one point. And I'm like, I was trying to like get them off me, and I felt like if there was some type of, there was a melee thing, but it didn't feel like impactful, right? And I was just like, man, I wish there was some form of melee combat so I could get in the mix. And I don't know if the game is really built for that. You know what I'm saying? That was just me a little, you know, as a person who kind of like plays games that like you could get up on people. I don't know if that it's maybe meant to be played at that. That was my only frustration. Like what to do when you are in that situation where people are on you. Man, you seem like you was going to say something in reference.
No, all I was going to ask is, do you guys know if there was a stealth takedown of any kind? Because that was to me the big omission is I would come up behind people and wait for like right thumbstick takedown or something.
Yes, I didn't see that.
I was so bewildered by that. That was the thing that really stood out to me as a why. Well, like, doesn't this make sense? So I was just wondering if it was for you guys too. But
no. Same deal for me. Me. I actually tried the same thing. It was a cultist. I caught him lacking. I'm like, oh, here's boom, went behind. I'm waiting for a visual prompt. Press this, press that. And I'm like, oh, all right.
Same. I got up on a rooftop and I dropped down behind 2 cultists that were kind of in sniper position, crouched down behind them. Nothing. They wanted turning around, and I had to shoot him in the face.
And that's got to be one of the worst feelings, to tell you the truth. So, not to dog on the game, but that's got to be one of the worst feelings in a stealth game. Is like, oh, I have to shoot you. I have to get into combat. I have to let everyone know I'm here when I absolutely had you beat. It's a horrible feeling, but Cog, continue.
No, that was literally, again, the AI of the cultures. I would say that was definitely, something that works. And I would have just loved to see. I know, like, as you affect the world, apparently the vampire gods start to watch and stuff like that. So I didn't get further enough, and I would have loved to see that because
I saw that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
okay.
He fought a rook. So,
this is why I'm glad we spoke, because I wanted to know what that experience was like, because I wanted to see what a quote unquote sub boss, mini boss, something. Tell me, man, go right in.
Yeah, it was cool because that was like one of my goals, right? I set these mini goals, much like Sav. I didn't mess with the main story because actually what they presented in the story trailer got me interested. I should have mentioned that at the start. The science experiment gone wrong was not where I thought this was heading. Right. I think that grounds it a bit in reality to some extent, and I like that. So I when I saw that story trailer, that's when I decided I don't want to touch it because I'm actually interested now. And so what I did was one of my goals was beyond the interior exploration and seeing how questing goes and how powers feel, was to see if I could max out this alert meter that would gradually increase. So for those who don't know, there's this meter that increases in Redfall, whereas you say get spotted and enemies are alerted to your presence or you're taking out important vampires, the gods will be watching you, it says. And this meter will increase. And once it fills up, you'll see red lightning start flashing down from above, and a rook will come after you, which is like this one of the vampire gods or something. So I had one come after me, and he I'm trying to think of what I could describe how he looked like. Almost a mob boss. Like he was this big muscular creature that had like a fedora on and stuff is what I recognized him at. I don't know what I was expecting, but it sure wasn't
Mr. X.
It was Mr. X style, like a bipedal guy just running at me. I'm like, that's the vampire guy? Like what? I expected some big dude floating around. At least in this case, the rook was not that. So he comes after me, and I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty easy one-on-one encounter. But what I noticed was the aftermath. This was right at the tail end of the demo. So I was losing a bit of focus because I saw everyone wrapping up and I'm like, I'm fighting the rook right now. Like, I can't stop now. I got to finish this out. So I finish off the rook. The lights turn on. And as the lights turn on in this event space we're in, now everyone's coming after me. I see enemies spawning. I'm fighting about 8 different. I'm fighting like 3 vampires, cultists. And it's kind of what Sav leaned into a bit of, like, now it's chaotic. Now it's about the gunplay. And I could see that being fun. But again, I thought about co-op a bit. Not where it was necessary, but this is more of that, oh, whoa, things are going crazy right now. This is fun, like with your friend. I ended up dying at that point there. But again, I was kind of like, all right, I sort of need to call it here. I don't want to be that dude just sitting there at the computer. So I had to reel myself in. Yeah. Mr. Matty, you're overstaying. You're welcome. Please, sir, put down the controller. So I didn't want to be that guy, but the Rook part, I will say it was cool. I like the mechanic of this gradually building in the background, the emergent gameplay, because what this mechanic enables is that he can come in at the wrong time, right? You can have a plan and not remember that bar is almost full, and you're like, I'm going to take that shot. Screw it. And you take that shot, and you see it fill up, and you go, oh, shit. Now I got all those guys, Bill Rook, and more. So I can see it being a pretty good mechanic in that individual experience there. The Rook was easy to take down, but I feel like it's the aftermath of like you have to avoid the environment, right? With the red lightning, you have to avoid all the enemies that seem to spawn afterwards. That it got crazy real quick. So I liked it because it was, again, a gradual buildup that led to a more emergent moment that I typically would, after that first experience, now, okay, I got to plan around that. Like, I got to be ready for when that happens. So it was good. I did like that part of the game.
No doubt. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you got a chance to experience it, because that was something I definitely wanted to hear about. I just wanted to move on as far as like now, obviously we played the single player version of it. And, we do know that this game, for the most part, is kind of marketed as a cooperative game. So I guess my question, and I'll start with you, Sav, in the sense of, you as a person that tends to be single player, with the multiplayer, do you think there can be synergy there where it comes together for you, even though I know primarily you play single player, but like, do you think based on your history with Arkane games and the way the skill trees and stuff, do you think it could potentially synergize that way in a way that works in the style that you may like?
100% for sure. Because again, if you play it sort of the ideal way, which would be, 4-player co-op PvE, each person taking a different protagonist, all of a sudden now you have a 12 move sort of power set with sort of improvements and things like that give you sort of this ultimate move set and ability set that when it comes to combat, like Maddie was alluding to before, hey, if you're playing as Layla, I'll drop the elevator and allow you to get up top. And if you're the sniper guy, now all of a sudden you have the bird's eye view. And it's the perfect scenario for me is that, 4 people who play with each other constantly, who know each other's play styles, each of them have a different character, and you figure out how to use those powers in unison. Like when I think about the potential synergy that can happen with players that are experienced and playing this constantly, it's a beautiful thing. It's like going online and looking at, Corvo Blink videos and seeing people, jumping from person to person, murdering them. That's kind of what I want to see. And I believe the potential is there. I just think the potential doesn't necessarily exist in that way in single player because of the limitations of how many powers you have. And even in multiplayer, if you have people playing multiples of the same character, you're going to sort of be doubling up on powers and not necessarily using the entire, breadth of of powers. So can it be that? Absolutely. Like if you look at, again, and I liken it to sort of a PvE hero shooter when I think about of Overwatch, right? Everybody has their power that when working together, it's a beautiful thing. And I think the same thing applies here. But again, you have to be willing to do it, because if you're not willing to do it and you focus more on the shooting, then it's going to be a 4-player co-op PvE shooter with some powers that you may use sometimes maybe to get out of trouble or stuff like that, but not necessarily use them in the way they're quote unquote meant to be used. And again, that's me being the Arkane snob, immersive.
Yeah, I know. Y'all both do. I know. I'm listening to y'all.
I never saw a move like this. I'm loving this.
Oh, no, man. I again, give me a world to play around in powers. I'll never finish the game. I'll be like, I have 200 hours in this game. How far are you? Oh, I'm in chapter 1. Like, that's it.
Because you're like exploring, you're going through.
That's what I do. So, yeah, absolutely. The potential is there. And I want to see that happen. I hope that the rest of the game is so good that it draws people in and we start seeing those types of videos, because that's going to be a special thing. And for me as a single player guy, I want to try that with you guys, because again, I want to see the promise of that type of gameplay explored. Honestly, this would be the first time something like that happens in a sort of story-based thing that isn't sort of a competitive Overwatch type thing, right? If you're able to accomplish this type of immersion and gameplay and an emergent gameplay in a multiplayer shooter, that would be special. So if they can pull it off, it'll be a moment for sure.
No doubt. Maddie, man, like what about you from the multiplayer standpoint? We understand, you guys' history as far as single player. Do you see a scenario where you think potentially it could come together and have that, that's the synchronization that maybe the single player Arkane experience would provide now that all 4 people are playing, utilizing these things?
Yeah, I think it was a good choice to show us the single player, but at the same time, there's a part of me that goes, was that kind of a mistake? Because I feel it did shine a light on, the issues we spoke about on the powers, where I do feel the complete experience lies in co-op. And that may be music to some people's ears or not at all. And that's kind of the problem with this game is, again, you feel like you have just a single piece of the puzzle when you're on your own. But in multiplayer, I kind of echo Saab's sentiment here of, I definitely believe it's a game that'll flourish in co-op. I think that's probably the preferred play style, all 4 players together, using each other's abilities. And because there were ones that we didn't get to check out. I think Remy was his name, who has this electric stake he can throw on the ground.
Yeah.
And, you talked about, they called it dusting vampires. And so you put the stake in them. That's typically what you have to do. There's no quiet way of taking down a vampire. Unless, in my case, the ultimate for my sniper would allow me to do so.
Okay.
You would like shoot them in the head, and once you kill them, they would dust. So it was actually pretty great.
I had some weapons like that too. So.
Oh, you did? Okay, I didn't know if there were weapons like that or not.
It's not a one-hit kill, is it?
I had some weapons. They almost, and I forgot to mention it, it was almost like a Destiny system in terms of the color to value proposition of the weapon. So like they were like a gold weapon that I would consider like the Destiny kind of exotic. And those had a limited amount of bullets, slow recoil, but they were like shooting stakes out.
Okay.
And I was able to dust vampire. And then they were like what I would consider the Destiny legendary, the purples, the next step down. And they would have little perks and stuff like that. So when they get to be out there, but for me, I felt like they included some of that dusting in some of the higher level weapons.
And that's what the short. Yeah, the sniper, that was only with the ultimate. That was one of the things I talked about in my video. I said, I don't know if there are weapons or powers beyond Remy's where you can dust vampires from afar, because I thought, well, this would be this option kind of, when you're playing the game, it speaks for itself. It's like, I would love to have something that lets me stake from afar. And so what I was getting at is, when you're trying to figure that out, having that player who can throw down the electric stake when you're fighting vampires and be able to dust them without someone running out and staking them in the heart with a melee attack would be great. There's also, you talking about the stake weapon, Cog, really brought to light something I did already like about the game, but it sounds like I may like it more, which is the variety of weapons that are available. The weapon I kind of discovered that maybe start to feel that way was a UV beam. So it's a kind of cannon-like weapon that shoots out a UV ray, and this thing was great against vampires because they got all up in your face, and I just shine it right in their face. They turn to stone. I just punch them once, and they fall to pieces.
Nice.
It was so good. Like I really liked it, and that's how you talked about those red clouds. I remember someone from Arkane came up because me being a dumbass, I'm like, red clouds. Let me walk in and see what happens if I try to punch it.
That's what happened to me. That's what happened to me.
I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, he pulled up real fast. He's like, no. He's like, you take out the UV beam. And I was like, oh, okay. That's what you do. You hose it down. It turns it into stone, and then you just hit it, and it just disappears. And then that red mist starts to go away. But I like that because to me, we didn't get the power interaction maybe we were looking for, but if the weapons can interact in creative ways, maybe we're cooking with something we didn't expect that could be pretty nice. And that would lead to me liking the loot driven nature of the game a bit more. I will say that sort of fell on its face for me. I know you were asking about multiplayer, but just on that note,
please.
I didn't get too into the loot because they this is the issue with press events is they started us off with really good stuff.
Yeah.
So when I'm pulling up, gray. Okay. Blue. No, I'm all right. Yeah. There was nothing compelling because they gave us gold everything. I think gold, purple.
We
we had amazing stuff off the bat. And they did the same thing with Deathloop during the review period, where I just had to put the pistol away because they gave us a silenced pistol off the get-go. And like that was something you had to earn throughout the game, and you had to be crafty to be stealthy. But they were like, here's this really easy way to be stealthy off the get-go. So yeah, the loot to me was a central point of the game, clearly. Like I mentioned how in the beginning, the exploration and things felt empty, because typically by the end of the area, I'll put that in quotes, you would find a room full of supplies, and that supplies would allow you to go back to the safe house and you would buy weapons. But also you'd find like that one supply cache that just had a ton of guns in it. And you're like, okay, what do we got here? And I liked how you could dismantle them for more supplies. You know, that currency system works well for me. It kind of reminds me of a simpler Fallout 4 where you know, in Fallout 4, you collect the junk and you break it down into materials. But here, like anything is a currency. And even in real time, you can just break down that gun and it becomes a currency. I'm just curious what else we can spend it on beyond the weapons, the ammo, the medical supplies. But yeah, the loot loop was something that I didn't get too into given our current setup, but I could see that also being compelling if the weapons are great, which could then all help out the multiplayer.
Right.
Yeah, and I'll jump in too, because it's funny you said that. And I think that's where we eyeball on the other side with you guys, because the Destiny in me and the looter in me really drove me to the experience. Whereas, yeah, to me, when you play Destiny, you know, this left bumper power ability, right bumper ability, double bumper is your super, right? And then those are on that cooldown period. So what I noticed is I was going around, again, going through my inventory, going through my weapons, and then when I would kill vampires, I'm looking at the loot. I'm looking, okay, is this better? And they would have like almost like a comparative system and things of that nature. Yeah, I just think that for a cooperative guy, I just felt like the potential could be really fun here. And the thing that really stood out for me, and I know this was the one of the talking points solved that we had with Harvey, was that, you know, unlike a State of Decay, I know the game is online, you know, stuff. I know that it's gotten some flack for that, but unlike a State of Decay, we have to be honest, like that they were tethered, the four in a circle. Mm-hmm. You know, when speaking to Harvey, he made it very clear from a design standpoint, they didn't want that. He fought for that, so that in the truest of open world sense, you know, Sov could go there, Maddie could go there, and there's not this circle of love that's going to automatically pull us back into each other. And I kind of like that, because you're always going to have some people that's going to run off and do their own thing, that kind of thing. So I thought that was cool. Yeah, I'm just willing to see how this thing, you know, continues to develop. I just think that right now, I would say solid experience. I need to see more. You know what I mean? And there's still a lot more narrative-wise. I want to see how the game progresses. But the initial feel for me would be like, yeah, this is a COD game. This is a cooperative, you know, have fun, you know, loot, and then some rambunctiousness with the bosses. To your point, though, I want to give you guys credit, though. I was a little disappointed in the stealthiness. Like I wanted a little bit more, especially for the single player, especially like, you know, being able, as we saw, we call it murk and murder.
Murk and murder.
Murder, baby. You know what I'm saying? Getting the cut, chill, you know, I wanted a little bit more of that, and I was surprised they didn't lean more into that with the single player. I thought that would be more of a primary focus, but it was an interesting choice. But I'll leave it with final thoughts. And again, Solve, you can start, you know, as far as just overall final thoughts, experience.
Yeah, just to speak quickly on the untethered thing, right? And Harvey made it clear that it was like, okay, you have this ability, you can go around the world, do whatever you want as a team and just break off. Now, the game will react to that. And, you know, each individual player will probably be put in a situation that is maybe too difficult for them if they wander off by themselves. So the game's kind of going to force you back to some sort of middle ground. That's interesting because, again, he mentioned how they, you know, he talked to the design team, was like, hey, this is what we want. And they told him, we can't do this. And then he said, well, figure it out because that's what we want. And they did. And they did. So it's going to be interesting to see that play out when the game is out in the wild.
No doubt.
But overall final thoughts. Like I said, the aspects of Arkane games that I love in terms of world building, environmental storytelling, are there. And that immediately is going to draw me in. Just like Maddie said, the story trailer really kind of intrigued me as to what happened in this town of Redfall. And immediately when we look at like the art design and how the characters look, they look like a little bit less of an exaggerated version of the characters in Dishonored, where they aren't as angular as those characters and whatnot. So it's a very cool art style, and you give me anything that looks like Salem's Lot, Stephen King, I'm in immediately. So from that point, I'm in. I'm excited to go through the story and see what it is. I'm excited for the potential of the game as a multiplayer shooter. If all of those immersive sim aspects are utilized to their fullest, I think that is a very cool prospect that we have not seen in a co-op shooter, right? So that's very exciting for me. And again, my worries are just the longevity of it for somebody like me who likes to play with, likes to be stealthy in these games first and foremost. When you say murk and murder, that's very true, right? Like for me, I like to be sneaky and then kill you anyway. That's just kind of my thing. Like, so I'm probably going to play through this game 4 times with each protagonist to kind of see the differences in gameplay and how that breaks up. So I'm excited to do that. And I think overall, it feels like a quality product that is just, for me, when I look at Arkane and I'm like, man, an Arkane game, it's
you guys need to let it go.
It's yes.
I've heard y'all complain. They told y'all it's multiplayer. This is y'all killing me with this. I gotta fight back now. Y'all killing me with this.
This is the thing, right? When you I don't even worry. This is the thing, though. I'm not what. When you tell me, my thing is, okay, you're going to delve into this new thing, right? If you're going to delve into this new thing, elevate the formula. Where it feels like in order to delve in it, at least in these initial entries, when you delve in it, you're minimizing the formula a little bit in order to fit into this other space, right? Mm-hmm. And when you look at what I deem to be a perfect product in Dishonored 2 as well.
Wow, it's like I'm listening to myself right now. This is great.
There are limitations there. Now, I will say this. The conversation around the weapons and how useful the weapons are and how diverse the weapon abilities are can add to that immersive simminess of it, right? Where it's like, okay, now I have a weapon that can create sort of havoc environmentally, that can complement the powers that I have. I'm excited to see if that plays out that way, because that would balance it more for me, right? But again, to me, it's a game that I think is going to hit well as more of a general product than a Dishonored, than a Thief, and things like that of that nature. And I'm excited to see how people react to it. I'm going to play it. I'm going to love the aspects of it. I'm going to love. And I hope that the stuff that I'm a little bit reticent about kind of changes my mind. But,
that's fair.
Not running it through the mud here.
I'm expecting a single player experience from the promoted multiplayer 4-player Arkane new experience.
He said, did the co-director of the game not say this is the single player experience?
Now that's where I gotta fall a lot.
Exactly.
I definitely agree with you guys. So coming from in fairness, and coming from your both perspective as single player Arkane guys, when they surprise both of you and say, hey, we're showing you the single player version, I can see how you go, oh, okay, maybe we do get that in fairness. So I do understand your point.
And then just little things like, again, we're a month out, optimization. How do the console ports work? Because we didn't play on console, right? How do those things work? And to the vampire AI, it's surprising because for me, the vampire AI was still kind of dumb. When you attack one, they start sort of, flying from side to side and stuff like that, the movement. But once I caught them, it was pretty easy to kill them. I didn't face a rook, right? But it just seemed like the rook is also kind of like a brute where he just kind of
trucks at you.
Trucks at you, right? So I would really like to see these boss characters, the vampires, and obviously, when we get to the vampire gods, I want to see like really cool boss fights and have these guys be able to push back on your powers and not be sponges, right? So we haven't seen any of that. I hope that plays out that way. So still very excited to play the game, the final product, and that's where I'm at.
Mr. Batty Plays, final thoughts on the Redfall of it.
For fear of sounding like Lord Sav again, I will try to just work around that.
You have to hold this. That's it.
I gotta eat this. This is the single player game.
Come on, what he was getting into.
Look, man, all I'm saying is you wore the wrong shirt to the show. That's all I'm saying.
Sav is definitely invited. I might be in trouble for Divine and Duke now.
All right, so what I'll say is I like the diversity of activities, just to lean into one additional thought. when I was going around the open world, it didn't feel checklisty in the way that a lot of open world games do. There was a lot to do. It felt manageable though, which was really nice. So I was doing neighborhood missions and unlocking underboss fights. I was doing side quests. I did one of those vampire nests where it kind of gets into my next praise of the game is the environmental artist went really hard in this game. I mean, no spare detail at all. It looks beautiful. The level design in the vampire nest, I think this is the tutorial one that I just happened upon. So I wasn't too impressed by that because it was a beautifully laid out hallway, like swervy little hallways, but there was no climbing or anything. It was just one long straight path. But man, did it look good. And that's for the whole game, right? Redfall as a setting feels lived in. It's beautiful. The interiors are awesome. I went across apartment buildings. We talked about the fire station, laboratories, theaters. There was everything felt unique and different. It truly felt like a world. And that made me want to explore. And I was happy with the things I found within it. Of course, I've already shared my concerns about the powers. I think that'll be ameliorated in the multiplayer component of the game. When you pull everyone together, I think that won't be an issue. But if you're playing by yourself, provided what we saw with the skill tree that I inspected is all we get, you're going to feel, I think, a little bit handcuffed, like one arm tied behind your back. You're going to wonder what if. And I think that may just be a design problem because if every character had one combat ability, one traversal ability, and then one ultimate ability, I don't think that would have been a problem. But just to me, that you put it perfectly, Saab, the kind of hero shooter approach of one bumper does this, one bumper does this, and both do this is so anti-Arkane, in my opinion, because they love to give you at least 5 powers. And the fact that every Arkane series to some degree has its own kind of blink, right? Like even Deathloop had a blink. That was like the best part of the game. You could blink. I am shocked that this isn't a guarantee for these characters, at least from what I've seen thus far. So maybe there's a crafty way to go about it. And I do think what I saw displayed to me that this game has a lot of strengths that need some time to show themselves. Like you mentioned with the Arsenal, that's something I didn't get a chance to experience, and we all played about an hour and a half of the game. So you think that's something I'd happen upon, but I think it just showcases this game has a lot of depth to it. There's a lot going on. It's certainly ambitious, and I do appreciate it. And am I concerned going into it? Actually, no. I think here I'm happy with the product that they've shown us. I feel pretty good. Why are you so shocked? I love Arkane. Why put those eyes back in your head, God? Come on now.
We're going to give it the benefit of the doubt beforehand.
My mind's not made up.
Impressions. I'm broke with you. I'm like, really, dude? There was fun had here.
Yeah,
he's like, we run into the mud. And he's like, but it got a 10.
Yeah,
9.5. Continue.
Yeah, no, just I feel like because a lot of folks showed to me to expand on what Saab and I have been saying this show. I feel like a lot of people didn't understand folks' criticism with Deathloop because I don't think they were ready to hear it when a game's getting a 10 out of 10 and you're the guy standing there going, well, here's why this particular, quote, special Arkane game, end quote, didn't resonate with me. And I feel like it's just worth expanding upon fully. And it'll probably happen again in my Redfall review if this continues to be an issue because people got to hear like what they did right and where they're changing their design philosophies and how it affects their current player base. But yeah, it's a fun game to play. It's a reactive game, which I like. And I do think the single player works, although it shows some of the issues with the game a bit more and I think actually exists within the full product. So, Redfall was a good time. Like I definitely walked away from it saying, okay, this went from a game that I had my concerns about to, okay, there's still some lingering stuff there, but I know there's a lot I like about it, and I'm looking forward to it now more than I was. Originally, it was just kind of a date on the calendar. Yeah, okay, I'll be there. We'll do our job for defining Duke. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll be surprised by this one, but now it's, okay, bring it on. Like, I'm looking forward to it. And I'm just curious how it all unfolds because, one thing Harvey touched upon during his introduction is he always talked about the launch characters, yes, right?
Yes.
And there is planned content for this game, and he made sure to emphasize no storefront, no microtransactions.
Yes.
And maybe that's where the strength of Microsoft shows a little bit because I think this game, to me, part of the ick to the multiplayer was, okay, y'all, where's the storefront? Where's the battle pass? Where is it? And if they can avoid that and make a truly just co-op game, like a pure co-op game, that automatically earns my respect because that just doesn't exist today. Like when you see more than 2 players on screen, there is some type of storefront there. And what he talked about was, look, we're adding characters in. It's going to be a paid for DLC, but we're going to add characters in. Great. Like if that's the extent of your monetization plans, like that's what we want more of in this industry. So I'm trying to celebrate the parts of Deathloop that are Deathloop. Oh, whoa, reel it in.
Whoa. Look at it. The Freudian slip. Look at it.
I'm trying.
Deathloop 8 coming in.
Yeah. I'm trying to celebrate the parts of Redfall that I typically wouldn't. Keep an open mind about it and see it for what it is rather than what I want it to be. Which I don't think I did for Deathloop, by the way. A lot of people accuse me of that, but you got to settle down, sir. But I definitely want to try to love this game more. That's for sure. I want to really come in because I was ready to love Deathloop because I was like, it's Arkane, but they caught me off guard and I was wounded. Yeah. Now I have my guard up, but I'm trying to lower it and step into Redfall. So this one can hurt, by the way. You thought Deathloop hurt? Redfall can really sting me.
I agree.
But I'm going into it open-minded, open-hearted, and I'm ready to love Redfall because what they showed me, I was like, okay, you got the chops. Like I saw a lot of the Arkane energy that was missing from Deathloop is here. It's just how you play the game, and I think who you choose can determine a lot of that experience. So yeah, overall impressions were positive with concerns.
That's fair.
Let's hear from you, fanboy. What do you got for us? You've had a lot to say.
We can tell that your opinions are bought and paid for.
I've been bought and paid for. Shout out to Arkane. Look, I'll be real. Like, I came in with middling expectation because there's a part of me that I'm like, I'll be real. Like, when it was first shown, I was like, okay. And each subsequent trailer till I got to this moment where we actually played the game, it's gotten better and better with the story trailers, the immersion, the world. And when playing it, I just felt it felt fun, right? And this is a game that I know Cog would like. And I think for me, I think the disconnect where I think the hardcore, Arkane guys like yourselves and me as the newcomer who sees this and is like, okay, one thing that I really appreciate, you said it very well, Maddie, is that most cooperative games are not really trying to tell a narrative. And most it's just like, hey, Left 4 Dead, and we're on to the next hub, and we're on to the fact that this is an open world cooperative game with a narrative excites me. Mm-hmm. That's the part. Like, I don't feel we have a lot of, and shout out to Harvey. He very much stressed. So if you remember, people saying Left 4 Dead, we're not that, bro. No. I love that they stood on that.
They were like, said, no, we're Far Cry. My dismay.
Hey, it's not a lot of the cooperative storytelling, true storytelling. Now, granted, I believe the discussion we had, again, if someone goes off and really does some world-affecting thing, then maybe we all, after that world-affecting thing, will come together in like a safe house and then go back out again after said thing or cinematic or whatever, right? But for the most part, everyone is free to do what they want to do. Look, I thought it was, to you guys' defense, I thought it was a nice olive branch to the single-player guys in our play session to say, hey, at least this exists and it is a somewhat, I would say, complete variation from the multiplayer, because it's like single player light for you guys, but at least we thinking about you guys. But for me, this is a multi-player game through and through. This is a game that I'm going to play with friends. This is more, I just want to see how you feel. Is it fun? And I came away from it pretty good. Just if you can, like Maddie said, get that AI together. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Please get your AI together with the cultists. You know what I'm saying? Or was it a situation where the difficulty was extremely easy and they put us later in the game with these super powerful weapons, and maybe that's why our experiences, at least my experience, was the way it was. But I came into it like, if we gonna put, I know this is, I'm not supposed to say these things. I would say it's in that like 80 to 85 meta range for me right now. Like, I was just like, okay, I think you're solid. I still need to see more of you. I want to see how this story progresses. I want to see how this world, other areas of the world, other quote unquote biomes of Redfall. And I love the safe houses aspect. Shout out to the turrets. Some turrets were tearing me up. I don't know if you guys have faced those where the cultists have little strongholds set up, and I seen turrets and they were tearing me up.
That's what I felt. No.
yeah, I felt the difficulty then. I'm like, damn, how am I going to approach this? You know, kind of thing. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'm very curious with the long tail. As Solve said, the long tail is going to be the key here. Is this going to be something, boom, in, out, we got what we want? Or is it truly something, it's replayable, we keep coming back, we keep seeing things, we keep doing things? And that's pretty much where I'm at with it. But that was my overall experience with the good friends at Arkane Austin. Mm-hmm. And any other final thoughts before we close out here on Redfall impressions?
I think I'm good, man. Got it all out of my system.
Got all my hate out.
I used to. You know, I got to mess with y'all a little bit. I was getting jumped. I was like, damn, I'm the only person. But anyway, salute to you guys. And my brother, Lord Sovereign, where can the fine people find you? What do you have going on, sir?
Well, getting ready to go to PAX. It's always an exciting time, but it's kind of crazy because got to make sure I spend time with Lady Saw before I leave because I'm going to hear it. So yeah, got to make sure of that. And but excited to see what's at PAX. Every year at PAX, we come away with, being excited about things that we had no idea existed. And some things that we knew existed and hadn't gotten a chance to play. I know for us last year, Evil West was a big thing, and finally getting to play it last year was fun, and to see that final product come to fruition. So that's always a great time. You can find me every Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern on the Iron Lords podcast on YouTube with my brother here, Lord Cognito, Lord King, and Lord Addict. And thank you for having me, man. This is great. First time I get to podcast with Maddie.
Yes, sir.
I always do. Me and Maddie are kindred spirits when it comes to this stuff.
Y'all are. It's dangerous with y'all. Y'all like the same, bro. I love it.
And the funny thing is, I'm usually the guy who really says, hey, love something for what it is, not what it's supposed to be. But when you keep making games that fall into the same line of DNA, if you tell me it's something totally different, I'm like, wait, cool, something totally different. Don't tell me it's kind of the same, because I'm gonna hold you to it.
Yeah. Well, that's fair. That's fair.
So that's it. But yeah, thanks guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course.
No, and my brethren, fellow Duke, Mr. Matty. It's always good to see you in person. Oh, no. Like, someone put that on Twitter. They was like, yo, this is your first time meeting him? I'm like, no.
There's so many pictures of us together.
So what's going on, sir? Any other thing on the outros you want to say to the people?
No, man. It was good to get a chance to see you guys in person. It's always fun trying to guess who's going to be a hugger, who's a dapper, and all that stuff, because that to me is always the social encounter. I try to guess, and the problem is because when people surprise me with the dap up, like Saab, I think I shouldered you in the face twice while we were out there.
It's the height thing, don't worry about it.
Yeah, like I just because I'm coming in for the hug, and you ended up going for the dap, so I'm like, now I'm leaning, I'm coming in late, and I came in hot, and I felt like I was like,
because I remember like last year PAX, I gave you the hug, like on the floor.
That's what I was thinking of.
But I'm a dapper into the hug. So that
so yeah, me and Cog got it going on. I already know what Cog's going for because him and I are the same, right? But that was like my closing thought. I was like, because I was going into that thinking, oh, this is my first event in probably 4 years. Like I've been to PAX and whatnot, but like in the terms of a press event, it's been a long time. I was like, oh, I got to get my intro game on. I forgot. I'm going to say hi to a ton of people probably. So yeah, it was a good time. Love getting hands-on time with Redfall. Appreciate Bethesda for giving us the time, giving us the experience. Appreciate Harvey showing up. I admire your guys' courage. You guys were able to chat him up a bit, but like I got to shake that part out of my system a bit. Like man, that guy's a gaming idol to me. I was like, dude, fuck, what do I say to him?
That's what when I was like, who's here? You know, like when Harvey talks to you, who? It was there was a little bit of shell shock there initially.
Yeah, he's got drip too, man.
Dressed well.
Very cool dude.
Yeah. Very cool guy.
100%, absolutely, man. I want his swagger. But anyway, I'm rambling now. That's all I got for you.
No doubt. You already know the Duke's in the building. Defining Duke Ultimate. Another one. Redfall impressions. Please hit us up, your comments, and appreciate the support on LSM. And that's all we got. And we are out of here, peeps.
Peace. Defining Duke, an Xbox podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from the United States of America. The show is conceived by Matthew Mr. Matty Plays Schroeder and me, Colin Moriarty, and is written and produced by Matthew Schroeder. Matty's co-host is Barry Lord Cognito Eversley. Defining Duke's executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including Defining Duke, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level on Patreon, and we're thankful for your kindness and generosity.